My own son introduced me to his future in-laws as the janitor who raised me. I'm Walter Chen, 73 years old, and I spent 45 years building something my son never bothered to ask about. He told 300 wedding guests I was the custodian at his high school, laughed about how I still wore my work uniform to family dinners, and seated me at table 17 in the back corner near the kitchen.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
What he didn't know was that I didn't just clean that school, I built it. I built 12 of them across 3 states, and when his best man stood up to give his speech, my son's perfect wedding was about to become a very different kind of unforgettable. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because this story starts in 1979, when I made a promise about the difference between giving your children everything and teaching them the value of anything. That promise would cost my son more than his wedding day. Most people look at me and see exactly what my son sees: a 73-year-old man who drives a 1998 Honda Civic with 240,000 miles on it and a dented bumper held together with duct tape. Someone who wears navy blue work pants and matching shirts with my name stitched on the pocket, even to restaurants where everyone else wears sport coats. My grandson Daniel calls me Grandpa Walt, and until 3 months ago, he thought I spent my entire career mopping floors and emptying trash cans at Jefferson High School in suburban Chicago. My son Michael, 42 years old, MBA from Northwestern, senior vice president at a pharmaceutical company, has spent the last decade absolutely convinced his old man is an embarrassment to his upwardly mobile lifestyle. "Dad, you can't wear that to my company dinner," he told me last Christmas when I showed up in my work clothes. "Jennifer's colleagues are going to think we come from nothing." Jennifer Ashworth, daughter of Douglas Ashworth, CEO of Ashworth Medical Devices, $500 million family fortune, grew up in a mansion in Winnetka with more bathrooms than I have rooms in my house. The first sign I was losing my son happened about 5 years ago when he stopped inviting me to important events: his promotion celebration, Jennifer's birthday party, their engagement announcement. All happened without me. I'd see the photos on Facebook later. Michael in expensive suits, surrounded by people who looked like they'd never set foot in a Walmart. The second sign came when he started referring to my work as Dad's janitorial thing in conversations, like it was a phase I never grew out of. "When Grandpa retires, he'll finally have time to relax," he told Jennifer's parents at their first meeting. "He's been working the same job since before I was born. Never wanted to do anything else." Never wanted to do anything else. As if I lacked ambition instead of having a very specific plan. The third sign was when Michael sat me down 6 months before the wedding and had the conversation. "Dad, Jennifer and I have been talking. We want you at the wedding, obviously, but we think it's best if we keep your introduction simple." Simple meaning what? Meaning we don't need to get into your work history with her family. They're very accomplished people, and we don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. I nodded and said nothing, just like I had been doing for years. But what Michael didn't know was that I'd been watching his transformation from the kind, curious kid who used to help me fix broken desks at the school to the man who was now ashamed to tell people what his father did for a living. I watched him become someone who measured worth by job titles and bank balances, someone who forgot that every dollar he'd used for his expensive education came from somewhere. The breaking point wasn't the conversation or the exclusions or even the embarrassment. It was what happened at the wedding rehearsal dinner 2 nights before the ceremony. Jennifer's family had rented out the entire top floor of the Sterling, a five-star restaurant in downtown Chicago, where the cheapest entree costs $85. I arrived in my Honda, parking it between a Tesla and a Mercedes, and walked in wearing my cleanest work shirt and navy pants. The hostess looked confused when I said I was with the Ashworth Chen wedding party. "Are you with the catering staff?" she asked. "I'm the groom's father." Her expression shifted from confusion to barely concealed pity. "Right this way, sir." The dinner was everything I expected. Crystal glasses, 7-course meal, wine that probably cost per bottle than my monthly car payment. I sat at the end of the table between Michael's college roommate and a cousin I'd never met. Jennifer's father, Douglas, stood up halfway through dinner to make a toast. "We're so thrilled to welcome Michael into our family. He's accomplished so much in his career, built himself from the ground up really, a self-made man in every sense." Built himself from the ground up. I glanced at Michael, waiting for him to correct the record, to mention that his state university tuition, his apartment during grad school, his first car, all came from someone. He said nothing, just smiled and nodded like he'd built his empire without no help from anyone. Then Douglas continued, "And we're grateful to everyone here who's been part of Michael and Jennifer's journey. Family, friends, mentors." He gestured around the table, making eye contact with everyone except me. It was like I was invisible. After dinner, Jennifer's mother, Patricia, approached me when I was looking at the dessert menu. "You must be so proud of Michael." "I am. He's worked very hard." Patricia leaned in slightly, her voice taking on that tone wealthy people use when they're being charitable. "And it's wonderful that he's been able to provide for you in your retirement years. I mean, janitorial work doesn't offer much of a pension, does it? Michael's been helping you out financially." It wasn't a question. It was an assumption, stated as fact. "Actually," I started to say, but Michael appeared at my elbow. "Dad, Patricia was just saying how nice the venue is for Saturday. We're so lucky they had availability." He steered his future mother-in-law away before I could finish my sentence. Later that night, I found Michael in the restaurant's lobby. He was on his phone, probably coordinating some last-minute wedding detail. "Michael, we need to talk." "Dad, I'm really busy right now. Can it wait?" "It's about what Patricia said, about you supporting me financially." Michael's face flushed. "Dad, she was just being nice." "Being nice by assuming your father is broke and dependent on you?" "Look, I didn't tell her that exactly. I just let her think that you're retired and I help out sometimes. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal that you're letting your fiancé's family believe you're supporting me. What else have you told them?" Michael sighed like I was being difficult. "I told them you were a janitor, that you worked at my high school, that you did your best with what you had, but you never really understood business or money or how to advance in life. I told them I put myself through school with loans and scholarships." "Loans and scholarships? Michael, I have the canceled checks, the tuition payments, the rent checks for your apartment, the car title. I kept everything." "Dad, please don't do this. Don't make my wedding about your ego." "My ego? You're rewriting history to impress people who judge worth by investment portfolios. They're good people, but yes, they value success, and I've worked hard to build my career. I'm not ashamed of where I came from, but I don't need to advertise it either." "So, you're ashamed of me?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." "Michael, answer me one question. What do you think I did for 45 years? You were a janitor at Jefferson High School. You cleaned classrooms, fixed broken equipment, maintained the building. That's what janitors do, right? And you think that job paid for your $40,000 a year tuition, plus room and board, plus your car, your study abroad program, your graduate school? Michael, that's over $300,000 in today's money. Where do you think that came from?" He hesitated. "I assumed you had savings. Or maybe grandma's life insurance. Your grandmother's life insurance was $50,000, and it went to medical bills before she passed. Try again." Michael's confidence wavered. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying you've never asked me about my work. Not once in 42 years did you ask me what I actually did, how I spent my days, where the money came from.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
You saw the work clothes and the old car and made assumptions. Michael's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me. I have to go. Jennifer needs me for something. We'll talk after the wedding, okay? We'll talk at the wedding. At the rehearsal dinner, Michael seated me at table 17 for the reception, the table in the back corner next to the kitchen doors where they put people they have to invite, but don't really want to showcase. My table mates were Jennifer's great aunt who was hard of hearing, Michael's college roommate's girlfriend who didn't know anyone, and two of Jennifer's younger cousins who spent the entire dinner on their phones. From table 17, I had a perfect view of the head table, where Michael and Jennifer sat with their wedding party, and I could see the DJ booth, where Michael's best man, Christopher, was going over his speech notes. Christopher Martinez, Michael's friend since freshman year of college, now a corporate attorney in New York. I'd met him exactly twice. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. I'll give Michael and Jennifer that much. St. Catherine's Church, decorated with thousands of white roses, a string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon, and Jennifer looked absolutely stunning in a dress that probably cost more than my annual property taxes. I sat in the fourth row on the groom's side, behind Jennifer's extended family and Michael's colleagues from work. My grandson Daniel, 8 years old and the ring bearer, kept turning around to wave at me during the ceremony. He was the only one who seemed to remember I existed. The reception at the Grandview Estate was even more elaborate. A sprawling venue overlooking Lake Michigan, with floor-to-ceiling windows, ice sculptures shaped like swans, and a 7-piece band that had apparently played at some celebrity's wedding last year. The cocktail hour featured 20 different appetizer stations and bartenders mixing drinks that came with smoke and fire and tiny edible flowers. I walked through the reception hall watching Michael and Jennifer greet their guests, watching him hug Jennifer's father like they were old friends, watching him laugh with executives from his company. He saw me standing near the shrimp station and gave me a quick wave before turning back to a conversation with Jennifer's uncle about golf handicaps. Table 17 was exactly where I expected it to be, tucked in the back corner near the swinging kitchen doors, partially blocked by a large decorative column. Every time the catering staff came through with trays, our table got hit with a blast of kitchen noise and heat. Jennifer's great-aunt Dorothy asked me 3 times who I was because she couldn't hear my answers over the band. The college roommate's girlfriend spent the entire salad course texting. The teenage cousins took selfies and complained about the Wi-Fi signal. I ate my overpriced chicken and watched my son from a distance, thinking about all the times I'd watched him from a distance over the past decade. Soccer games where I sat alone in the bleachers because he told his teammates' parents I was just a family friend. His college graduation where he barely introduced me to his professors. His engagement party where I wasn't invited at all. The speeches started after dinner. Jennifer's father went first, welcoming Michael to the family and talking about how impressed he was with Michael's career trajectory, his work ethic, his determination to succeed despite coming from humble beginnings. Despite coming from humble beginnings, as if humble beginnings were something to overcome rather than something that built character. Douglas raised his glass. To Michael, who proves that with enough drive and determination, anyone can rise above their circumstances. The room applauded. Michael beamed. I sipped my water and said nothing. Then Jennifer's maid of honor spoke, telling cute stories about Jennifer's childhood, about their college adventures, about how Jennifer knew Michael was the one because he was so ambitious and successful, because he'd built such an impressive life for himself. Built such an impressive life for himself. I thought about the apartment I'd rented for Michael during his MBA program.
the $2,400 a month I'd paid for 2 years while he studied and networked and built his impressive life. Michael stood up next to give his groom's speech. He thanked Jennifer's parents for welcoming him into the family, thanked his colleagues for taking time off work to attend, thanked the wedding party for their support. He talked about how grateful he was for everyone who helped him become the man he is today. My mentors at work who taught me about leadership, my professors who challenged me academically, Jennifer's family who showed me what true success looks like. He looked around the room, making eye contact with table after table of important people. And of course, my father, who did his best to provide for me growing up, who taught me that honest work, no matter how simple, has dignity. Honest work, no matter how simple. The applause was polite but brief, a perfunctory acknowledgement of the janitor father in the back corner. Michael sat down, looking pleased with himself, looking like he'd fulfilled his obligation. Then Christopher Martinez stood up, holding a microphone and a small stack of index cards. Christopher looked nervous, which was unusual for a man who argued cases in federal court. He cleared his throat and smiled at the crowd. "Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Christopher Martinez, and I've had the privilege of being Michael's best friend since our freshman year at Northwestern." The crowd settled in for what they probably expected to be a typical best man speech. Funny stories, embarrassing moments, heartfelt wishes for the couple. Christopher started conventionally enough. Michael and I met in Introduction to Economics, where we both nearly failed the midterm because we spent more time arguing about the Chicago Bulls than studying supply and demand curves. Laughter from the crowd. But over the years, I got to know Michael as more than just a friend. I learned about his work ethic, his determination, his drive to succeed, and I learned about where that drive came from. Christopher glanced at me. I felt my heart rate pick up. 3 days ago, Michael asked me to mention his father in my speech. He said, "Keep it brief, just acknowledge that he was there and tried his best." So I started thinking about Walt Chen, the man sitting at table 17 right now, the man Michael introduced to Jennifer's parents as the janitor who raised him. The room got quieter. Michael's smile faltered. Christopher continued. "I got curious about this janitor father, this man who apparently just did simple, honest work. So I did what lawyers do. I researched. I started with Jefferson High School in suburban Chicago, where Michael said his father worked for 45 years. The room was completely silent now. I called the district office and asked about their long-term maintenance staff. They connected me with the facilities director, who laughed when I asked about Walt Chen, the janitor. Christopher looked directly at Michael. He said, "Walt Chen? Walt didn't work for us, we worked for him." Michael's face went white. You see, Christopher said, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent reception hall, "Walt Chen doesn't clean schools. He builds them." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Jennifer grabbed Michael's hand. Christopher pulled out his phone and held it up. "This is Chen Educational Construction and Development Incorporated in 1979. Founder and CEO, Walter Chen. Over the past 45 years, Chen Educational has designed and built 47 schools across Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana, 12 high schools, 23 elementary schools, and 12 specialized facilities. Current company valuation, approximately $340 million. The number hit the room like a thunderclap. Douglas Ashworth's mouth fell open. Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. Michael sat frozen, staring at Christopher like he was speaking a foreign language. Christopher kept going, his lawyer voice clear and precise. But here's what fascinated me most. When I dug deeper, I found that Walt never took a salary from his company, not $1 in 45 years. Instead, every penny of profit got reinvested into 3 areas: employee profit sharing,
educational scholarships for low-income students, and a private family trust that paid for exactly one thing. He pulled out another document. Michael Chen's education expenses. Let me read from the trust disbursement records, which are public because of the educational scholarship component. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice melting in people's drinks. August 2000, $32,000 to Northwestern University for Michael's freshman year tuition and housing. September 2003, $48,000 for Michael's study abroad program in London. June 2004, $28,000 for Michael's first car, a Honda Accord. August 2006, $95,000 per year for 2 years for Michael's MBA program at Kellogg. He lowered his phone and looked at Michael. Total education investment, $387,000, not including the monthly living allowance of $2,000 that continued through graduate school. Michael, your father didn't just clean the school you attended, he built it. He built the library wing where you studied for your SATs. He designed the science labs where you fell in love with chemistry. He constructed the auditorium where you graduated. Jennifer was crying now, not happy tears. Michael looked like he wanted to disappear. Christopher's voice got softer but somehow more powerful. And do you know what Walt Chen wears to work every day? Those navy blue work clothes with his name stitched on the pocket? Those aren't janitor uniforms. Those are the uniforms he requires all Chen educational executives to wear when they visit construction sites. He wore those clothes to your wedding because he came directly from a site inspection at a new elementary school in Milwaukee. A school that will serve 600 kids from low-income families. A school that exists because your father believes education is the foundation of everything. The room erupted in whispers. People were staring at me. Some were looking at their phones, clearly Googling Chen educational construction. Douglas Ashworth looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Christopher raised.
Michael walked toward table 17 like he was moving through water. The band had stopped playing. 300 wedding guests watched in complete silence as my son crossed the reception hall, past the ice sculptures and the elaborate centerpieces, past tables full of people who 30 seconds ago thought they knew exactly who everyone in this room was. Jennifer followed a few steps behind him, her wedding dress rustling, her face a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. Douglas and Patricia Ashworth stood up from table 1, and I could see Douglas pulling out his phone, probably already Googling Chen educational construction. "Dad!" Michael's voice cracked when he reached my table. "Dad, is that true?" "Is what true, Michael?" "Everything Christopher just said. The company, the schools, the money." I set down my fork. I had barely touched my chicken. "Every word Christopher said is publicly available information. He didn't reveal anything that wasn't already in state incorporation documents, educational trust filings, and business registries." "But you're a janitor. You clean schools." "I build schools, Michael. I have for 45 years. There's a difference." Jennifer's great-aunt Dorothy, who apparently could hear perfectly well when she wanted to, leaned forward. "Young man, are you telling me you didn't know your own father built a $340 million company?" Michael's face flushed red. "He told me he was a custodian." I corrected him quietly. "I told you I worked at your school. You assumed I was a custodian. You never asked what I actually did." Douglas Ashworth arrived at our table, Patricia right behind him. His face had gone from its usual confident ruddiness to an alarming shade of pale. "Walter, I need to apologize. We had no idea that you were—" "Douglas Educational is registered under Chen, not Douglas," I said. "My full legal name is Walter Chen. I never use Douglas except on official documents." Patricia grabbed a chair from the next table and sat down heavily. "But you drive that old car. You wear work clothes to everywhere. You live in that small house in Mount Prospect." "I do. Why would I need anything else?"
Douglas looked like his entire worldview was collapsing. "Walter, you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars." "On paper, perhaps. In reality, I own a construction company that employs 340 people and builds schools for children. The money isn't mine. It belongs to the work." Michael found his voice again. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what? That you built schools instead of cleaned them? That you run a major construction company? That you're wealthy?" "Michael, I tried to tell you. 3 years ago, when you called to tell me you got the promotion and were moving to the new condo in Lincoln Park, you said, 'Dad, I've finally made it. I'm not going to end up like you, stuck in the same dead-end job my whole life.'" The words hung in the air. Michael's face crumpled. "I tried to tell you that night. I said, 'Michael, I'm very proud of my work. I've built something meaningful.' You laughed and said, 'Dad, I know you're proud of keeping schools clean. That's admirable in its own way.'" Admirable in its own way. So I stopped trying. Jennifer spoke for the first time. "Mr. Chen, my parents said you were retired and that Michael was helping you financially." I looked at Douglas. "Where did they get that idea?" Douglas had the decency to look ashamed. "Michael mentioned you were on a fixed income, that you'd never made much money in your career, that he was making sure you were taken care of." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I turned the screen so they could all see it. Chen Family Trust, current balance $47.3 million. Chen Educational Construction Operating Account $23.8 million. Chen Educational Scholarship Fund $15.6 million. Personal checking account $8,400. I closed the phone. The $8,400 is what I live on each month. Everything else goes back into the business or the scholarship fund. Michael, you've never given me a single dollar. Every penny you've ever earned, you earned because I made sure you had the education to earn it. Patricia was reading something on her phone. "Walter, it says here that Chen Educational has built 30% of all new public schools in Illinois over the past 2 decades, that your company pioneered green building standards for educational facilities, that you've been nominated for the National Construction Excellence Award 4 times. 3 times, I corrected, and we won twice. Why does any of this matter?" Douglas looked stunned. "Why does it matter? Walter, you're one of the most successful businessmen in the Midwest. You've revolutionized school construction. You employ hundreds of people. You're a titan of industry." "I'm a man who builds schools. That's all I've ever wanted to be." Michael was crying now, tears running down his face, his expensive tuxedo suddenly looking costumey and false. "Dad, I told everyone you were just a janitor. I told Jennifer's family you were poor. I put you at table 17. I asked Christopher to keep his mention of you brief." "I know." "You knew?" "I've known everything you've said about me for the past 5 years, Michael. Every dismissive comment, every embarrassed introduction, every time you've erased my actual life to make yourself look more self-made." "How?" "Your wife." Michael looked confused. "I'm not married. Your ex-wife, Sarah, Daniel's mother. She sends me screenshots. Every Facebook post, every conversation she overhears when she drops Daniel off for your weekends. She thinks you should be ashamed of yourself." Jennifer's hand went to her mouth. "You've known this whole time that Michael was lying about you?" "I've known that Michael believed his own story, that he genuinely convinced himself that his father was an embarrassment, that he needed to rewrite history to fit into your family's world." I looked at Douglas. "A world where worth is measured by country club memberships and luxury cars instead of schools that educate 50,000 children every year." Douglas sat down heavily. "Walter, I don't know what to say. You could start by explaining why you assumed Michael built himself from the ground up without ever asking him who paid for his education." Patricia's voice was small. "We thought he had scholarships. He told us he graduated with debt. Did you ever ask to see that debt? Did you ever question how a kid from Mount Prospect afforded Northwestern and Kellogg without help?" Michael's voice was barely a whisper. Dad, I'm sorry. Are you? Because 3 hours ago you introduced me to your in-laws as the janitor who raised you. You told them I did my best with what I had. You seated me in the back corner next to the kitchen like I was an obligation, not your father. The wedding guests were no longer pretending to not watch. Everyone had turned their chairs toward table 17. Some were filming on their phones. Others were frantically texting. I could see Christopher at the head table watching everything with the careful attention of a lawyer documenting testimony. Michael, I said, standing up so I could look my son in the eye. I built 47 schools so that children like you could get educated. I never took a salary so that employees like the single mothers on my framing crew and the immigrant workers in my concrete division could have profit sharing and health insurance. I drove an old car and wore work clothes and lived in a small house so that 340 families could have stability and 600 students could have college scholarships. And I paid for every penny of your education without ever asking you to acknowledge it or thank me or even understand where the money came from. Do you know why? Michael shook his head, unable to speak. Because I thought you'd figure it out eventually. I thought you'd ask questions. I thought you'd see that janitors don't write checks for $32,000 tuition payments and wonder where that money came from. I thought you'd become curious about your father's life instead of just assuming you knew everything based on how I dressed. Michael collapsed into the chair next to me. Dad, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. Just sit here and think about what you've done. Not just to me, but to yourself. You built a life on lies, Michael. You told these people you were self-made. You erased your own history because you were ashamed of work clothes and old cars. You became exactly the kind of person I raised you not to be. The room was absolutely silent. 300 witnesses to a son realizing he didn't know his own father at all.
The wedding reception never recovered. Within 20 minutes of Christopher's speech, half the guests had left. Not quietly, but in clusters of conversation, pulling out phones, whispering urgently as they headed for the exits. I watched Douglas Ashworth's business partners leave first. 3 men in expensive suits who'd spent cocktail hour talking about market opportunities and investment strategies. They stopped at table 17 on their way out, and one of them, a silver-haired man named Patterson, extended his hand to me. "Mr. Chen, I had no idea. Your work with green building standards is extraordinary. We'd love to discuss some potential partnerships." I shook his hand but said nothing. He handed me a business card and left quickly, like he was embarrassed to be associated with the Ashworth family's mistake. Jennifer's relatives were next. Aunts and uncles and cousins who'd spent the cocktail hour acting like they owned the room now couldn't make eye contact as they hurried past. Jennifer sat at the head table, crying, her $7,000 wedding dress crumpled, her perfect day destroyed. Her bridesmaids surrounded her, shooting angry looks at Michael, who sat frozen at table 17, with his head in his hands. Patricia Ashworth stood near the windows overlooking the lake, talking urgently on her phone. I could hear fragments of her conversation. "No, I had no idea. Douglas didn't know either. Michael never told us." The embarrassment in her voice was clear. Not embarrassment about how they treated me, but embarrassment about being caught treating me that way in front of 300 witnesses. My grandson Daniel appeared at my elbow, still wearing his little tuxedo, his eyes wide. "Grandpa Walt, why is everyone leaving?" "Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, buddy. Big ones." "Is Dad in trouble?" Michael looked up at his son's voice, and the expression on his face was something I'd never seen before. Complete devastation. Not the frustration of a business deal gone wrong, or the annoyance of traffic making him late. This was deeper. This was a man realizing he'd destroyed something irreplaceable. "Daniel," Michael said, his voice rough. "Come here, son." Daniel looked at me first, asking permission. I nodded, and he went to his father. Michael pulled Daniel into a hug and just held him, shaking. Douglas Ashworth approached our cable again, but this time his confident businessman demeanor was gone. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 30 minutes. "Walter, I need to speak with you privately." "About what?" "About making this right. I don't think you can make this right, Douglas. Not tonight. But my daughter, her wedding. Surely we can salvage something here. Your daughter's wedding ended the moment she married a man who was ashamed of his own father. That's not something you salvage. That's something Michael has to live with. Douglas's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face went even paler. What is it? I asked, though I had a feeling I knew. The video. Christopher's speech. Someone posted it online. It's already got 50,000 views. Patricia joined us, her phone in her hand, her face stricken. It's everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. People are calling it the best man speech that destroyed a wedding. Hashtag wedding disaster. Hashtag karma. I pulled out my own phone and searched. Sure enough, multiple videos from different angles. Guests had filmed Christopher's entire speech and the aftermath. The top comment on the most viral version had 12,000 likes. Imagine being so ashamed of your millionaire father that you seat him at table 17. This groom deserves everything he's getting. Another comment. The dad built schools for 45 years and the son couldn't even be bothered to ask what he did? This is what entitlement looks like. A third. Walter Chen is a legend. Built a $340 million company, funded his son's entire education, and still shows up in work clothes because he's not trying to impress anyone. That's real success. Michael was reading the same comments on his phone, his face getting redder with each one. Dad, we need to put out a statement. Explain what happened. Explain what exactly? That you lied about me for 5 years? That you were so desperate to fit into Jennifer's family that you erased your own history? Dad, please. I'm being destroyed online. You're being held accountable online. There's a difference. Jennifer appeared, her makeup ruined from crying, her mother hovering protectively behind her. Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Michael told us you were a custodian. He said you lived on a pension and that he helped support you. I'm sure he believed that by the end. When you tell yourself something long enough, it becomes real. But why didn't you correct us? Why didn't you tell us the truth? Because it wasn't my job to correct my son's lies, Jennifer. It was his job to tell the truth. Jennifer looked at Michael with something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Not love or admiration or partnership. Disappointment. Betrayal. Michael, you told me your father could barely afford to attend the wedding, that we were doing him a favor by including him. You said he'd be uncomfortable around my family's wealth. I never said that exactly. You said exactly that. I have text messages where you told me not to mention money around your dad because it would make him feel bad about his simple life. Michael's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications piling up so fast he couldn't read them. Comments, shares, tags, messages from friends and colleagues seeing the videos. One message preview caught my eye before he could swipe it away. It was from his boss at the pharmaceutical company. Michael, we need to talk Monday morning. The board has concerns about the judgment issues raised by this incident. Concerns about judgment issues. That's corporate speak for your career just got complicated. Michael saw it too. Dad, this is ruining everything. My job, my reputation, Jennifer's family, everything we've built. Everything you've built, I corrected, on a foundation of lies about who raised you and how you got here. Another message appeared on his phone, this one from a number he clearly recognized because he went even paler. What is it? I asked, though I had a feeling I knew. The video. It's from Northwestern's Alumni Association. They're asking about the accuracy of my scholarship claims in my alumni profile. Michael, Jennifer said slowly, what scholarship claims? I may have implied in my alumni bio that I paid my own way through school. Implied! Jennifer's voice got very quiet. Michael, did you lie to the university too? Patricia grabbed Jennifer's arm. Jennifer, let's go get some air. We need to talk about next steps. Next steps? What next steps? Patricia lowered her voice, but I could still hear her. Damage control, legal options, perhaps an annulment. An annulment? Mother, we just got married 3 hours ago. And 3 hours ago, we thought your husband was an honest man from humble beginnings. Now we know he's a liar from privileged beginnings. There's a difference. Jennifer started crying again. Patricia led her away, leaving Michael alone with me and Daniel. Douglas stood awkwardly nearby.
clearly wanting to follow his wife, but not sure if he should say something first. "Walter, I hope you understand that we were operating on false information. I understand that you believed what you wanted to believe, without asking questions. Rich people often do." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Your daughter's been dating Michael for 3 years. Did you ever ask to meet his family? Did you ever wonder why I wasn't at the engagement party or included in wedding planning? Did you ever think it was strange that a man with an MBA and a 6-figure salary claimed his father lived on a pension?" Douglas opened his mouth, then closed it. "You assumed Michael was exactly what he appeared to be because it fit the story you wanted. Rich man marries into wealth. Classic American dream. Except the only thing Michael made himself into was a liar." The reception hall was nearly empty now. The catering staff had started cleaning up, looking uncomfortable as they navigated around the drama at table 17. The band had packed their instruments, the ice sculptures were melting into expensive puddles. Christopher Martinez approached, his lawyer face carefully neutral. "Walt, I need to apologize." "For what?" "For dropping that bomb at my best friend's wedding. You told the truth. The truth isn't a bomb unless someone's been lying." Christopher glanced at Michael, who stared at his phone like it was a snake. "I thought he knew. I thought he'd known all along and just never talked about it. That's what made it so shocking when I realized he genuinely had no idea who his father was." Michael looked up, his voice bitter. "Everyone knows now, don't they? 3 million views and counting."
6 weeks after the wedding, Michael showed up at my house in Mount Prospect. Not the expensive condo in Lincoln Park that he'd been so proud of, but my small 3-bedroom ranch with the chain-link fence and the lawn I still mowed myself every Saturday. He drove up in a Toyota Camry I'd never seen before, not the Audi he usually drove. He was wearing jeans and a plain button-down shirt, not the designer clothes he typically favored. He looked like he'd lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. When I opened the door, he didn't have the confident smile I'd grown used to seeing, the one that said he had everything figured out. He looked nervous, uncertain, young. "Dad, can we talk?" "Of course, come in." He followed me into the living room, the same living room where he'd grown up, where we'd watched Cubs games together when he was a kid, where I'd helped him with homework at the coffee table that I built myself in 1985. He sat on the couch and looked around like he was seeing the room for the first time. "This house," he said quietly, "is it paid off?" "Paid it off in 1992. "Michael, why are you asking?" "Because I just realized I've never asked you anything about your life. Not in years, maybe not ever." I sat in my recliner, the one with the duct tape on the armrest, and waited. Michael took a deep breath. "I lost my job." "When?" 2 weeks ago. They said the viral video raised questions about my character and judgment. They couldn't have a senior vice president who'd publicly lied about his background. It was a liability issue. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" "I mean, I deserve it. I know I deserve it. But are you actually sorry? Or are you just saying that because I'm your son?" "I'm sorry you're suffering, Michael. I'm not sorry you're learning." He nodded slowly. "Jennifer filed for annulment. The marriage lasted 18 days. Shortest marriage in her family's history. Her lawyers cited fraud in the inducement, said I misrepresented my background and financial situation. Douglas won't return my calls. Patricia blocked my number. Most of Jennifer's family's acting like I don't exist." "Welcome to table 17, I said. Michael winced. "Yeah, I get it now." "Do you? Because 6 weeks ago, you put your own father at table 17 and didn't think twice about it." "Dad, I've thought about nothing else for 6 weeks. Every single day I wake up and remember that I introduced you as the janitor who raised me, that I let Jennifer's family believe you were poor, that I told people I put myself through school, that I erased everything you did for me because I was ashamed of work clothes and an old car." His voice cracked. "I was ashamed of the man who built schools so kids like me could get educated. What kind of person does that?" "A person who confused appearance with worth," I said. "It's a common mistake, especially these days."
Michael pulled out his phone and showed me something. It was an application. Dad, I've applied to 63 positions in the past month. I've gotten 4 interviews. 3 of them ended when the interviewer recognized me from the videos. The 4th one offered me a position at half my previous salary, and I took it. What's the job? Associate project manager at a mid-sized construction firm in Schaumburg. I start Monday. I felt something shift in my chest. Construction? Michael, you have an MBA in pharmaceutical marketing. I know, but I realized something. I don't know anything about what you actually do. I spent 42 years as your son, and I can't tell you the difference between a general contractor and a subcontractor. I can't read a blueprint. I don't know what goes into building a school or why green building standards matter or anything about the work that paid for my entire life. So you're going to learn construction? I'm going to try. The job is entry level. I'll be coordinating schedules and managing paperwork, but maybe if I understand how buildings get made, I'll understand something about who my father is. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Patterson next door watering her garden, the same garden she'd been watering every summer evening for 30 years. Michael, I finally said, why did you really come here today? He looked at me with tears in his eyes. To ask if you teach me. Teach you what? How to build something real, not a career or an image or a social media profile. Something that lasts, something that matters, something that helps people instead of just impressing them. I stood up and walked to the window. My truck was in the driveway, the same 1998 Honda Civic with the duct tape bumper. It needed an oil change. I had been putting it off. Michael, teaching isn't something you do in one conversation. It takes time. Years, probably. I have time now. Lost my job, lost my wife, lost most of my friends. Turns out when you build a life on lies, it all disappears pretty fast when the truth comes out. What about Daniel? Michael's face softened. Sarah's letting me see him twice a week. Supervised visits for now. She says I need to prove I can be honest before I can be trusted alone with him. She's probably right. What does Daniel think about all this? He asked me if you're really rich. What did you tell him? I told him that Grandpa Walt built schools, and that's more important than being rich, that money isn't what makes someone successful. He said he already knew that because you always helped him with his homework, even when you were tired from work, and that's what dads are supposed to do. I felt my throat tighten. Smart kid. Gets it from his grandfather, Michael said with a small smile. So, will you teach me? I'm not asking you to forgive me, Dad. I'm not asking for money or help fixing my life. I'm asking for a chance to learn what I should have learned years ago, how to be someone you could be proud of. I turned to look at my son, at the boy I'd raised, who had become a man I didn't recognize, who was now asking to become someone new. I'll teach you, but we start at the beginning. You'll work your job in Schaumburg, and on the weekends, you'll come to my sites. You'll wear work clothes, you'll get dirty, you'll learn what it means to build something from the ground up, literally. And Michael, you'll do it without complaining about the hours or the physical work or how it looks to other people. Okay. And you'll stop trying to impress people who measure worth by car brands and zip codes. Okay. And you'll teach Daniel what you learn, so he understands that his grandfather built schools, not cleaned them. But more importantly, so he understands that both jobs have dignity, that honest work is honest work, regardless of the title. I can do that. Can you? Because 6 weeks ago, you couldn't. Michael stood up and walked over to me. Dad, 6 weeks ago, I was a different person. A worse person. Someone who thought success meant erasing where it came from. I don't want to be that person anymore. We stood there in the living room, father and son, separated by years of assumptions and pride and missed opportunities. Then Michael did something he hadn't done since he was a teenager. He hugged me. Not a perfunctory greeting hug or an obligatory holiday hug, but a real embrace. The kind that says, I'm sorry, and thank you, and I finally understand all at once. When he pulled away, he was crying. I've got 45 years of catching up to do. Then we better get started. First lesson starts Saturday morning. Site inspection in Milwaukee. New elementary school. We leave at 5 a.m. 5 in the morning? Builders don't sleep in, Michael. You coming or not? He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. I'll be here. He left a few minutes later, climbing into his sensible Toyota and driving away. I watched from the window as his taillights disappeared down the street. Then I called Christopher Martinez. Christopher answered on the second ring. Walt, how are you? I'm good. Listen, I wanted to thank you. For what? For what happened at the wedding. Christopher was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? It destroyed Michael's life. It gave him a chance to build a better one. There's a difference. I heard Christopher smile through the phone. You're a wise man. Just a man who built schools, I said. That Saturday morning, Michael showed up at 5:45 a.m., wearing boots he'd clearly just bought and looking nervous. We drove to Milwaukee in my old Honda, talking about building codes and educational design standards and green construction practices. Michael asked questions, real questions, not polite ones. He took notes on his phone. He listened. And when he got to the site and I handed him a hard hat with Chen Educational Construction printed on it, he looked at it for a long moment before putting it on. This is who you are, he said quietly. This is who we are, I corrected. If you're willing to do the work. He nodded. I'm willing. Then let's build something, son. The sun was coming up over the construction site, illuminating the skeletal framework of what would become a school for 600 children. My son stood beside me, wearing work clothes and a hard hat, finally ready to learn what it meant to build something that mattered. It had taken a destroyed wedding and a viral video and the loss of everything he thought defined him. But sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes you have to lose everything built on lies before you can start building something real. Michael was finally ready to learn that lesson, and I was finally ready to teach him.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.